Well, they're still.
Which day?
Well, they're still not even confirming whether they'll even do one. But I reckon they probably will.
And remember, guys, Perth on Wednesday. Back to that one in. So we flying there on. Let's go from Canberra to Perth on Tuesday. Morrison. Yeah. So I'm wondering, do you reckon Shorten even will? If he does. Yeah.
Wouldn't be fine.
If he does it.
That'd be nice too.
Thanks. Why are you fighting? I'm fighting. Welcome to Redcliffe Hospital, one of Queensland's busiest hospitals. Every year, some 68,000 patients come to this hospital to get emergency treatment at the emergency department. It's also got one of the busiest oncology units also in the state. Today, we have gone on a tour of this amazing hospital and met some of the fantastic nurses, doctor staff, doing incredible work for our local patients here in the Petrie electorate. We've chatted to patients and families who are going on one of the biggest battles of their life, battling cancer, and we thank people like Deborah and Judy who spoke to us today with their families in the middle of their treatment. Labor has a health action plan for the Redcliffe Hospital. It includes a $10 million plan jointly with the state government to deliver an MRI machine here at the hospital, a hospital that does not have an MRI machine, as I said, one of the busiest in Queensland. We also have a plan to reverse the LNP's $4.2 million worth of cuts that have been dealt a devastating blow here at our hospital. Today I'm so pleased to be joined by Bill Shorten, our Labor leader, to make a first for our hospital. Today we're announcing a $12.2 million package, a $6 million plan to buy a second CT scanner for this hospital. We're also going to take a $6.2 million upgrade of the ICU to benefit the amazing patients that call this town and this community their home. The choice, ladies and gentlemen, at the next federal election could not be any clearer. Between a team, a Labor team that values this hospital and this local community, and a Liberal national team and a local member in Luke Howarth who has cut from this hospital. The only way the people of this community will get an upgrade at this hospital and reverse those cuts is to vote Labor. I'd like to invite Bill Shorten now to make some further remarks about this exciting announcement today.
Thanks, Fred. Good morning, everybody. Fantastic to be here on the Redcliffe Peninsula in the seat of Petrie. One to watch on election. We're running an Mulholland. I'm here because as the election comes to a close, Labor is saying that one of the key issues for voters in making up their mind, making a choice, is the quality of healthcare and Medicare in this country. Labor throughout this election campaign has said we want better hospitals, not bigger tax loopholes. Today we're announcing $6.2 million for the ICU, the intensive care unit here. $6 million for the second CT scanner. We're also we'll be investing $60 million in the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital to provide cutting-edge technology, oncology services to make sure that Queenslanders in the fight of their lives get the support they deserve. The oncology ward and talk to people. There's 300
immigration laws?
Yes, what we would do is seek to use the same formula which the government's used with the United States. So the same system the government uses is the one we would use in our discussions with New Zealand.
Mr. Shorten, you've been
Tanya Plibersek has raised the Malaysia solution this morning when talking about resettlement deals, and she's also suggested that the US could take more refugees from Manus and Nauru. Would you consider revisiting the Malaysia solution or asking the Americans to take more refugees?
We're committed to maintaining strong borders. We've made it clear that we will do boat turnbacks where the defence authorities and border security say it is safe to do it. We are committed to the view that anyone who comes by boat via people smuggler will not be processed and settled in Australia, full stop. Now, we've also said, and you're all at the debate last night, that what we don't believe is that we should keep people for, semi-indefinite detention. I congratulate Malcolm Turnbull for the work he did. We think there are opportunities if other regional places want to take people. That's fair enough. Having strong borders shouldn't make Australia a cruel country. We'll work it through, but I'm not going to have the government run their scare campaign, somehow saying that because we believe in the humane resettlement of people in third-party countries, that is not a commitment to strong borders. I noticed that Peter Dutton's been let out of wherever he's been, and he's popped his up in Townsville, and Christina and I were talking about it, and she's got some observations that I think she should share with you.
Thank you, Bill. Look, Peter Dutton has been let out of his cave. He's been kept underground somewhere by the Liberal and the National Party, but they've let him out of his cave to appear on national television, in fact, to travel all the way to Townsville. Look, frankly, this is a desperate attempt by the Liberals to scare Australians. This is a desperate attempt to cling to power. This is a desperate attempt to deploy the most toxic man in Australian politics, and to have him out there raising the spectre of fear and division in the community. The Australian people understand and support the commitment that both parties have to strong borders, but the Australian people do not believe we need to be a cruel country, cruel to people on Manus and Nauru in order to secure our borders and keep them safe. Peter Dutton, being let out of the cave, out there in Townsville, trying to scare people, one has to ask, is Mr. Dutton indeed auditioning for some job in the future? Perhaps Peter Dutton is showing us his audition tapes for the role of leader of the party after the election.
So you wouldn't allow asking the US
Why don't we just share it around? Sorry, you're next.
Just on borders and home affairs, one of the things that Peter Dutton did say this morning in Townsville is that you should outline who your Home Affairs Minister will be. You've pointed to who your Health and your Education Minister will be. Can you give us even just one name of someone within your party who you would consider fit for that role?
I've got plenty of people who can do the role. But I tell you what, I'm like the Liberal Party. I don't want to take my orders from Peter Dutton. What a joke this fellow is. He destroyed Malcolm Turnbull. One of the single biggest issues that we hear wherever we travel, I'm sure you hear it for your exhaustive inquiries too, is what people really hate about modern politics is the turmoil, the backbiting and the pushing. Peter Dutton has never properly accounted or shown any remorse for tearing up the Liberal government of Malcolm Turnbull. Like, we don't take orders from him. That's one of the many good reasons why I'm in the Labor Party. We will put forward our full ministry after the election, but since we're talking about ministerial lineups, has anyone seen their Environment Minister? Do you know they've had 5 Defence Ministers in 6 years? This is a government, and by the way, what is the real role of Clive Palmer in this government? And Clive Palmer, Pauline Hanson's outed Clive Palmer and said that he was trying to heavy her to vote for $80 billion of tax cuts last year. Just how much power will Clive Palmer, the unnamed minister at the Morrison cabinet table, actually have? Sorry.
You mentioned scare campaigns earlier. Today, Labor is linking Clive Palmer with the government's former proposed company tax cuts that the Treasurer has said is now dead. You're not running a scare campaign of your own with this?
Well, let me just go to what Mr Morrison said. And first of all, does anyone think that Clive Palmer doesn't want a corporate tax cut for big business? That's certainly what Pauline Hanson's made clear he wants. Does anyone not really think that Mr Morrison doesn't have one of the biggest IOU checks in Australian political history to Clive Palmer if he gets returned? I mean, Clive Palmer ain't going into politics to, raise taxes for big business, is he? So Mr Morrison, no, I think he's the real problem here. And you say, you know, trying to give Mr Morrison a leave pass in recent times because of his sudden conversion to not wanting to give a tax cut to big business. It's in the Liberal DNA. I have here a quote from what Mr Morrison said. It's just about the 1 year anniversary of when he said it. Morrison, quote, "We're fully pursuing our enterprise tax plan. Nothing's changed on that. We remain committed to this. We don't flip or flop on these things." Well, you be the judge. Was he lying then or is he lying now? The reality is that the Liberal Party for the last 3 years has wasted the nation's time pursuing a one-point economic plan. Tax cuts for big business. And we see it again last night when he was evasive. He still wouldn't confirm that he wants to give $77 billion to the top tier of tax earners. The Liberal Party serve the top end of town in Australia. They serve the vested interests. Labor wants to ensure a fair go for all Australians.
On robo-debt, social advocates have talked about the legalities of this program, and groups like ACOS have asked for Labor to more solidly outline what you would do on that. What's your view on the legality of robo-debt, about what that exists and what would Labor do?
Well, we want to make sure that people aren't receiving welfare to which they're not entitled to, and no one gets a leave pass on that. But I do think that there are smarter ways of getting people to pay back money and indeed investigating what people actually really do owe rather than giving it to the debt collectors. This is a government who've got no problem giving $80 billion to the top end of town, but if you're on New Start and you found yourself a job and you accidentally got an extra week's pay, they find the debt collectors for you. This is a government who, if you are weak and powerless in this society, who if you're someone who this government doesn't think supports it, they'll chase you. And if you're at the top end of town, like Mr Palmer, he apparently owes the Commonwealth taxpayer $70 million, doesn't he, because the Commonwealth has paid his debts to the workers. See, that's the difference. If you are poor and disadvantaged, this government will sick the debt collectors onto you. But if you're Clive Palmer and you owe your workers tens of millions of dollars, Mr Morrison will put you in the Senate.
Why are you coming off?
Mark,
Why are you
sorry,
coming
I'll just go to Mark and then you.
Mr. Shorten, you told one of the patients in there this morning that with a week to go, or lots of people are tuning out. So whose fault is that? Are you failing to engage voters, or have people just had a gut full of modern politics?
Well, I do think that not everyone's fully engaged in the election. I think some people are turned off by negativity too, aren't they? Also, what I was thinking in that in an oncology ward is these people there are in the battle of their lives. One of the ladies, she moved up from Gippsland. She's moved up to Queensland, resettled with her sons who were there. We met the son there too. She got this was last April. She's now had a diagnosis. That was her first treatment today. Like, when you get that news, I tell you what, you're not greatly fussed about what order or how to vote cards in somewhere, are you? But having said that, this is why this election is important. Because when you strip away the noise and some of the negative carry on and all of that, if you're in the fight of your life, don't you deserve to have a government in Canberra who's as brave as you? Don't you deserve to have a plan for the future? What I learned out of last night's debate is I saw for the first time Mr Morrison's threadbare real agenda on display. You know, we had 5 questions. We each asked each other questions. There were 5. They're all about Labor policy. We don't talk about Liberal policy because they've only got tax cuts unfunded in 2 elections' time. So what I'm saying to voters as we approach the last week is Mr Morrison thinks that cancer treatment's free. Mr Morrison thinks there's no problem with childcare costs. He thinks they're going down. Mr Morrison thinks he's got climate change under control. This government is out of touch. They've only got one plan, which is to look after the special vested interests. For me, making sure that this hospital, this is a modest hospital, it's the centre of this community. I wanted to have better resources. Labor's made choices. We're going after some of the unsustainable tax subsidies at the top end because, for me, when sick people get a fair go in this country, we are a better country for everyone. Sorry, you were next.
Why are you palming off the questions about resettling refugees in the United States when it's Tanya Plibersek who raised the prospect and not Peter Dutton? Can we get a yes or no about whether you consider that deal?
No, interesting use of the word Palmer there, but no, we're not. Listen, I congratulate Malcolm Turnbull. That's not something you hear the Liberals do, for keeping that deal on track with President Trump. I actually don't think that we should keep people in indefinite detention forever when we can resettle them in other countries. I'm sure you'd agree with me. So we're not. The point about it is, if we've got people who've been in indefinite detention really for 6 or 7 years, Let's move them on. Let's find third-party countries, that's all. But let's not fall for the government scare campaign. I mean, this government, they've said we're going to take your ute off you. They've said that you're going to lose your weekend. They've said that there are death taxes when there aren't. You know, they should be ashamed of themselves, signalling the people smugglers a week out from the election to try their hand. They will find us completely resolute, working with border security exactly as we should. So, 2 last questions, guys. 2 last questions, I'm sorry. You?
Mr. Shorten, on your health plan, you talked about the election being about choices.
Yeah.
You have a number of policies. Health is one where there's quite long-term spending plans. Will the costings tomorrow show those the budget impact over the medium term, over a decade?
4 and 10 years, yes.
Talking about Mr. Shorten, thank you. Thanks, Susan. You've heard Labor's been critical of the use of tax havens like the Cayman Islands, but it's been revealed today that IFN investors, a fund manager owned by 27 industry super funds, including Australian Super, owns infrastructure assets that are ultimately held in trust in the Cayman Islands and deliver a return for their members here in Australia. Do you accept that this shows that there are legitimate uses for tax havens in Australia?
I believe completely in transparency. I don't want to see a Cayman's Island-based company take over our health system as been given the green light by this company. Global capital moves around, but we need to see transparency. We need to see where tax is really paid. It's not good enough in this country that we have large multinationals paying no tax or nearly next to no tax. You know, for me, it's about a fair go for all Aussies. The reality is you run a local news agency, you're a hard-working journalist, you work in a hospital, you've got to pay the tax pretty much as is levied on you. You don't have the chance to split your income. You don't have the chance to park it in the Caymans. I, for one, am sick and tired of weak Conservative governments not demanding greater transparency in terms of what goes on with their taxation.
Ms. Wong, you're talking about pursuing new third-party resettlement options. New Zealand is clearly on the table. Is Malaysia also on the table?
Oh, there's no arrangements to talk with Malaysia. We're not the government. But you use the word new. New Zealand's been on the on the table for 4 or 5 years. You've got to ask yourself why the government hasn't pursued it. Do they want to prolong this issue to score political points? Listen, I know that the government wants to scare people about boats. Well, I'm calling that out. We've got that. Just hang on a second. I'm not the government. What I'm saying here is that this government has run out of anything to talk about. What a surprise. The Thursday or Friday of the second last week, government's tried all the other scare campaigns. I noticed today no one's asking me about that nonsense discussion about climate change costs when in fact the cost of not acting is greater. We all know the government has pressed the panic button. They want to scare people on boats. They know we've got the same policy on boats. We will have a very good foreign policy because I've got Penny Wong and they don't. You know, we will make sure that we help resettle people. But you have sophisticated analysts. You know we've got the same policy on boat turnbacks. You know we've got the same policy on regional resettlement. You know we're committed to resettling people overseas and not letting them stay here. This nation needs more than scare campaigns. You saw him last night. He thinks that childcare costs are going down. He thinks that cancer treatment's free. He thinks that first home buyers don't have a problem in the market. Goodness me. He even surprised me when he said, climate change, yeah, we're going to make all our targets. Rubbish, rubbish, rubbish. All that man can do is talk about us. They don't offer any plan for the future of Australia. They just want to give their corporate tax cuts back on the table with old mate Clive. They want to give $77 billion away to the top tier of tax earners. We know they have no plans. You know they have no plans, whereas we want to help the sick people in this hospital. Thanks, everybody. I think we've covered everything.
Senator Wong, from the debate.